I don't care why Boris Johnson has finally decided to press the button and clip the wings of the BBC permanently. Perhaps it's part of the so-called Operation Save the Big Dog or Operation Red Meat, depending on who you believe, to keep the big man in number 10 Downing Street by returning to policies for which he was elected. Or perhaps Boris and his cronies have finally worked out the Beeb's bias is infused in virtually every decision they make, including their rabid coverage these past 2 weeks designed to force him out as Prime Minister. Here are just a few examples of the Boris-bashing corporation in action.
Will they think the Prime Minister deserves credit for apologising? If, that is, he really did apologise.
The guy just would be millions and millions of people who
but
simply would not see it that way.
He wasn't apologising for going to the party, was he?
Well, I think that's...
Let's be clear, because that's really important.
Well, it's the other bit... Was
he apologising for going to the party?
Do you want to
answer that question?
The other bit of what I
No, you don't want to answer that question.
No, I do, but I want to...
So was he apologising for going to the party or not?
I want to answer it by referring to the fact that...
Will you say sort of yes or no?
It's his defence that he didn't realise he was at a party. Is he now going to do the decent thing and resign?
Resign.
Downing Street has apologised to Buckingham Palace following revelations that two parties were held at number 10 the night before the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral.
Like a horror movie for Newsnight. Now, look, I'm not saying for a single second that Boris shouldn't be held to account for the egregious and outrageous rule-breaking going on at number 10 Downing Street as they forced all of us to cower in our homes in fear for weeks on end. But to suggest the BBC's coverage has been balanced is like saying Emily Maitlis and Lewis Goodall aren't lefty opinion columnists masquerading as impartial reporters. And that is the fundamental issue with the BBC licence fee, which must be abolished. I don't want to pay a penny to help support a once great organisation that has become increasingly institutionally biased over the past 5 years. They completely missed the majority support for Brexit and then spent 2 years doing all they could to undermine the result of the biggest democratic mandate in British history. Then it happened all over again with the Boris Tories' demolition of Labour's Red Wall, when they were realistically, remember this, pondering the prospect of Jeremy Corbyn as PM. And over the pandemic, the BBC's coverage has been nothing short of a disgrace. The corporation's credibility has been shot, and we won't forget it. It's also a BBC now that hates Britain. And actually, it's the opposite of patriotic, as we saw with the decision to axe Land of Hope and Glory from the proms, and this open mocking at the Union Jack from two of its highest-profile presenters.
Robert Jenrick, thank you. I think your flag is not up to standard size government interview measurements. I think it's just a little bit small, but that's your department, really. It's just a thought.
Just imagine that. Being proud of the Union Jack. That's something to make you titter and sneer if you're a BBC presenter. And despite massive demand, the BBC has refused to play the national anthem each day to close its programming on BBC One. After we discussed the issue on the show last week, there was overwhelming demand from our brilliant viewers for us to pick up the mantle. So I'm delighted that from tomorrow morning, GBNews will play God Save the Queen at 5:59 a.m. every day to launch our live programming. It's about time Boris saw sense on what the BBC is really about these days. He loved the fact the Beeb has been a virtual propaganda arm throughout the 2 years of the pandemic, amplifying the government's scare campaign with terrifying results and banning virtually any guest who goes against the COVID orthodoxy. But now the corporation, piggybacking on other people's journalism, is targeting his very political life. Boris is finally prepared to push the button. A 2-year licence fee freeze being proposed by the anti-Beeb new Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries should just be the start.
Mr Speaker, the licence fee settlement is only one step in our roadmap for reform of the BBC. In the last few months, I've made it clear that the BBC needs to address issues around impartiality and groupthink, and I have had constructive discussions with the BBC about these issues in recent months. But the BBC now needs to put those words into action. It needs to convince the British public that those changes are in fact being made and to provide regular and transparent accounts of its progress.
I believe the BBC poll tax must end altogether. It's actually insane that we are forced to pay £159 a year to the BBC, even if we don't want to consume any BBC services, but do want to watch private TV stations like GBNews, for example. Folk overseas can't believe such an antiquated system exists, and young people simply won't put up with it. The cord-cutter generation has already said hell no to such a model, given they're used to watching TV over YouTube or by paying a small fee each month to companies like Netflix or Amazon. Last night, BBC presenters, including the news host Dan Walker and its sickeningly overpaid sports auto cue reader Gary Lineker, were on a fully fledged campaign to go against the government and save the BBC licence fee. But it does beg the question to me, how on earth can news presenters like Walker hope to be impartial during their coverage of what is such a controversial political issue? We all know the answer, though, don't we? They won't be. What I don't get is that if BBC staffers are so confident about how brilliant their content and services are, as they always claim, then let people pay for it. If they want to pay for it. A subscription model would allow the BBC to charge whatever they want and test if there really is a demand for what they provide. It would also make the BBC accountable to the people, rather than the quinoa and champagne quaffing Lunday Liberal media elite who currently make all the decisions.